Splinter Cell is a stealth action adventure game. It came to us by way of Ubisoft in 2002, and they managed to create a game that stands shoulder to shoulder with the other giants of the genre. Once upon a time, Ubisoft was a reputable name in the gaming space, a household name, and not the corporate equivalent of a TV dinner. Though in recent memory, they've had a bit of a face turn dealing out own zones to billionaires, which is pretty sweet. Definitely not on my bingo card this year. Ubisoft's hold on the 6th generation of consoles was formed primarily by tactical military shooters. All of these are seared with the Tom Clancy brand. And if you're unsure who Tom Clancy is, that's fine. He's basically the Tolkien of Reaganites, known for authoring novels like Hunt for the Red October, Patriot Games, Red Storm Rising, and many, many more. Several of which have received adaptations in various forms throughout the years, and in this particular case, video games. We've got a bit of history to get through before we get to the meat of this, so let's start there. See, Tom Clancy was a bit of a gamer, I think. Well, he was at least aware that they existed, and aware enough that they made a fuck ton of money. So in 1996, he established the development studio Red Storm Entertainment, taking the name directly from his sophomore novel, and began producing games and slapping his name all over them. Their games sold well and carved a nice little niche in the gaming market, so much so that Ubisoft bought them 5 years later and continued on using Clancy's name in some good and some absolutely bizarre ways.
It's fast-paced firefights meets punk rock mosh pit.
They did eventually drop Tom Clancy's name off this project before just dropping the entire goddamn thing into a trash bin. Games with the Tom Clancy brand have sold and reviewed well throughout the years, proving to be an exceptionally powerful brand identity to gaming markets. But despite all of this, it's really dubious how much Tom Clancy was involved in any of it. And his involvement is officially zero nowadays since he passed away in 2013. But hey, Ubisoft has the rights to use his name on whatever, whenever, and however they want, in perpetuity, which is fucking insane to think about.
Your soul is mine.
Splinter Cell was the first new franchise to be introduced under the Ubisoft umbrella, though I guess you could argue Ghost Recon was, but it was already in development when Ubisoft bought Red Storm, so I'm not counting it. Stealth and subterfuge are no strangers to video games, and this being a stealth game, it took direct inspiration from those that came before, primarily Metal Gear Solid and the Thief series. The genre and a lot of its pioneering conventions have been well established for nearly half a decade before Splinter Cell came out. But that doesn't mean they didn't try to do things a little differently. The turn of the century and the release of the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox saw a lot of games integrate stealth mechanics in some form or another. These were generally binary interactions and more cartoonish by comparison, but Splinter Cell was intended to be a far more grounded project than its contemporaries. As such, it teeters closer to the Metal Gear Solid comparison than to, say, Sly Cooper. We play as Sam Fisher, a grizzled former Navy SEAL voiced by the impeccable Michael Ironside as he's recruited into a clandestine startup division of the NSA called Third Echelon. Third Echelon's purpose is to investigate matters of a sensitive political nature, like what kind of anime you've been watching late at night. You are a spy, but not the fun, sexy James Bond kind of spy, more like the scary military-industrial complex kind of spy. Being a secretive organization, leaving no trace of your existence behind is your primary directive, but that's mostly up to you as a player.
One false move and you're dead.
The plot begins in 2004 as Sam Fisher is recruited into Third Echelon. Sam, of course, isn't alone in this. Third Echelon is helmed by Lambert, a strayed arrow and an old friend to Sam. He's also supported by data analyst Anna Grimsdottir and runner Vernon Wilkes, who both serve as field support for Sam. These three are his constant companions throughout the adventure. The main narrative is framed around heightened tensions between the nation of Georgia and its neighboring countries. It snowballs pretty quickly into the normal Tom Clancy Reagan-era through line of nuclear annihilation, and this of course comes by way of other Clancy fallbacks, the Russians and the Chinese. Splinter Cell would serve as a console exclusive for the original Xbox for a limited time, but would also have some interesting ports. It would end up being a defining series to the console and its identity, and it was this game specifically that convinced me to beg my parents to buy me one. But it did have a PC release later on, and fortunately there's not a terrible amount on our fixer-up list. All you really need to do is download the enhanced SC patch I'll link in the description, extract the files into the necessary folder, and configure some settings in the INI. If you launch the game and it says Enhanced Splinter Cell, then congrats, you did it! It's a good idea to clamp that FPS to 60 to fix some busted NPC pathing issues, which even then might not fix it. There's also a chance your mouse sensitivity might fuck with your accuracy, so if you can, it's best to set the polling rate to 125 Hz. I'm not sure if that actually helps, but more on that later. It's also worth noting that there were several platform-exclusive missions that are not readily available on Steam, but they are on the GOG and, Uplay versions. Regardless, they are easy to track down and even easier to install, and I encourage you to do so since they're some of the best missions in the game. Now that that's all out of the way, let's actually talk about Splinter Cell, starting with art direction. So lighting was becoming the hotness of the early 2000s. This was at the beginning of real-time dynamic lighting becoming the standard technology at the time, and it's the most important mechanic you'll be contending with. Shadows are large contrasting pools for you to hide in. Conveniently, you have a nice little light meter on your HUD to help you gauge how exposed you are. Obviously, as a secret agent man, you'll be wanting to stick to the darkness as much as possible. Even without the light gauge, it's pretty evident where you should be standing, but sometimes what the game considers absolute darkness isn't always equal. So in extreme cases, it considers this as dark as something like this. The gauge can be affected by ambient lighting from computers, vending machines, and other ambient sources, so positioning yourself is paramount. But as long as your gauge is in this last segment, you're not moving, and the enemy is circa right not in your goddamn face, you should be fine.
What the hell are you?
This game was made on a modified version of the Unreal 2 engine, allowing it to actually take advantage of these lighting effects, so graphically, I would say Splinter Cell looks pretty good, but it's definitely dated. It stands above a lot of great games from 2002, but goddamn, was it facing some bananas competition that year. Overall, the models and the textures hold up pretty well considering the age here, save for some weird LOD loading. Growing from the breaking trends of the time, Splinter Cell doesn't use motion capture. In fact, every animation was hand animated by the team. It gives an interesting stylistic edge to the atmosphere. Every action feels exaggerated, but never too cartoonish. Direction-wise, it's a hard military sim aiming for grounded realism. However, it does try to flex some artistic license with it. This was back when modern-day stuff was still a bit niche. Medal of Honor would still be milking World War II for a while, and the first Call of Duty wouldn't release for another year. So everything on display here is stuff the military uses, used, or at least tried to use at some point. Sam's iconic night vision goggles are not so based on real tech. At the time, of course. Tom Clancy games were always more interested in maintaining a sense of authenticity in the early days, but Ubisoft convinced the author to bend the rules a little bit before eventually just going hog wild with future weapons. Environments are nothing really to write home about. It's a lot of office buildings, warehouses, courtyards, you know, the usual fare you'd see in a modern military game now. A lot of straight, square boxes. I don't really want to sound insincere about that. Areas are filled with tons of details and set dressing to make them feel a little more distinct from one another. The game can be pretty drab with its color palette, but it's surprisingly vibrant at times. It's a lot of darker colors like grays, browns, mostly pitch black, but it's not uncommon to see bright, saturated reds, blues, or greens. In truth, you'll be experiencing a lot of the game with the dull green overlay of night vision, which can make some areas more interesting and others very ugly. It's the sharp contrast of light and dark that really make these zones feel special and give them some character. Good lighting goes a long way and can do wonders to make some less than stellar looking textures or models absolutely pop. And this visual atmosphere is what made Splinter Cell so iconic when it came out. Speaking of, Michael Ironside voices Sam, bringing this rugged charisma and charm to the character. Ironside seemed to truly care about this role too. Most details we get about Sam are a direct result of his desire to know the character and get into Sam's mind better. A classic case of what's my motivation.
Listen, just give me the key. I'm tired and I hate making people scream. It gets me down.
Here.
Thanks.
But he didn't do it alone. He's supported by some quality talent too, like Don Jordan and Claudio Besso, as Lambert and Anna Grimm's daughter respectively. These three in particular give a lot of life and much needed personality to an otherwise dull and forgettable cast of characters.
I haven't been in the field in years.
Sure, but tradecraft is something you don't forget. It's like riding a bike.
Or wearing high heels.
It does, however, become abundantly clear that Ironside was not a cheap date once we start hearing the rank and file NPCs. We're talking vaguely Russian accents that might make Eastern Promises leave the room.
I thought the kitchen was closed.
It's a special order for Colonel Kobaishvili.
Ah, excellent. May I?
Please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If this was any more ham, I'd be serving it up for Christmas. And then you have some doing their very, very best Chinese impression.
What if it detonates on the way?
The Colonel told me that's impossible.
Why? Everything's in place.
But it's not armed. It's actually a very delicate machine.
It's still possible.
Quiet, just eat your food. We have to be ready to go in a few minutes. America is a big fish.
I hope the General has the nerve to follow this through.
The General would skin himself alive for the Empire.
And it's not wise to question him.
Who's questioning? I've come this far. I would follow him to my grave.
I too would follow him to your
Me too.
That aside, the writing is solid. I never felt like any of the actual written dialogue was bad, just performances really ham-boning the absolute hell out of it. And I cannot in good conscience speak about this without talking about the horrendous radio chatter.
This is Gringo. I want the American soldiers prepped and in studio. The executions are going forward as planned. Yes, sir.
Less offensive is the music, and that is to its detriment. The soundtrack for the game is mostly a benign score, a real bog standard affair. It's not bad, it's just a serviceable one. There isn't a lot to dig into about it. Splinter Cell in many ways can be viewed as a generic military game, and the music accurately reflects that. However, I cannot apply the same criticism to the combat themes. Getting spotted isn't exactly good advice for a stealth game, but they gatekeep some of the best music in the game behind it. Overall ambiance is phenomenal too.
Another in Bangkok, 3 in Canada.
Any order?
Nope.
Take it back and turn up the volume.
The foolish.
If you're really committed, Splinter Cell does sport EAX sound, which can really add a lot to the atmosphere for some games, and Splinter Cell would be no exception. But no one has a sound card anymore. You were probably born in this century, and they were long dead before that. You can get it to work, but you'll have to do a bit of hoop jumping, and frankly, I didn't feel like cruising through a bunch of GitHub repositories just to hear a guard's footsteps reverberate 2 rooms over. But maybe I should have, since much like lighting, sound will also play a massive role in gameplay. You interface with it mostly through the speed and material you're on, so consideration for this is essential. You can afford a quicker pace on softer floors like carpet, but you'll need to take it nice and slow on harder surfaces like concrete or wood. But even then, some guards just have incredible hearing.
Who is that?
Sound is the most erratic aspect to deal with. Enemies can be painfully discerning about noise, sometimes. Even when moving at an absolute snail's pace, guards can just kind of sense a bad vibe, but you can also leverage this in your favor. Cans and bottles found around the environments can be used to distract guards, but it's incredibly unpredictable. Frequently, they'll investigate the source of the commotion, and other times they'll just come directly to you, and that inconsistency bleeds into plenty of other areas of the gameplay. So it's a stealth game, obviously. And Splinter Cell plays this pretty straight. It's chiefly an exercise in patience, in more ways than one, that can lead to a pretty tedious playthrough. Lots of trial and error that comes with the territory, and boy howdy does Splinter Cell just have loads of it. Splinter Cell is notable for introducing some brilliant mechanics to a wider, younger audience bound to home consoles. But there's a fair bit of crust on this, so execution is oftentimes rigid and inconsistent. Starting with what isn't inconsistent, the controls for PC are surprisingly elegant in lieu of a controller, though you may want to adjust some of the default key bindings because... No, I am not fucking doing that. Fortunately, they're solid controls, and I never felt like I had to fight them. Sam controls how you would really want or expect him to, but you can definitely experience some jank with the edge detection. He sometimes cannot decide if he wants to climb up a railing, hang off of it, or just plummet straight to his death. The most interesting bit of this is that Sam's speed is controlled by the mouse wheel. Roll up to go faster, roll down to go slower. It's a simple solution to a binary control scheme, one I don't think I've seen before, though I rarely play stealth games without a controller. Besides walking and jumping, Fisher has some special moves he can pull off. The Van Damme special is a signature move of Sam's, dominating the pre-release material. And since it's a unique and interesting mechanic, naturally it's only utilized a handful of times. A single time from memory, actually. It feels like a very flash, no substance type of move, meant to wow and entice you, but it's never used in any meaningful way. Sam is a former Navy SEAL, so theoretically he is trained to kill just about anything that walks and breathes. However, despite his reputation, Sam is incredibly piss poor at dealing out death. At least in a straightforward way. You're not supposed to be taking enemies head on, but that doesn't mean the game won't force you to sometimes. So Sam does have a handful of lethal and not so lethal options for tackling this. Ultimately, though, this doesn't matter too much. Unless you are given a direct order to not kill someone, you're free to drop whoever you want. First and foremost of your lethal options is the pistol, which isn't just awful, it's unreliable.
Nope, I'm in trouble. Nope, somebody's trying to...
Nope. This isn't so much of a problem with the SC-20K, but you aren't going to be running and gunning. The SC-20K can really do it all, and this is the most versatile of our equipment, and thankfully, much more predictable. In addition to those, we have the iconic Tri-Design goggles, the visual foundation for this entire series' identity. Initially, you'll only have night vision available to you, but later on you'll be handed thermal vision. And while night vision is useful the entire game, thermal, on the other hand, is less utilized. Still, you do put it through its paces. Like this section where a yard is covered in mines and you have to swap back and forth to avoid a spotlight, but also to avoid mines. Later on, you use it to read keypads and determine the code based off the heat from the buttons. It's very neat, and it would have been cool to see that more throughout the game. Sam has other equipment of varying use on him as well. You have a map at your disposal, but it's useless. It'll give you a vague idea of where you are, but nothing specific. Levels are linear, so there's not much chance of getting lost, but some objectives might be a little nebulous in what exactly you need to interact with. Probably most useful in his repertoire is the optic cable. It's a snake camera that lets you peer under doorways to get a feel for what's on the other side. It's an immensely useful tool that would be a mainstay in this franchise right up until they just stopped giving a shit. Building off of that, you have two different cameras for your SC-20K, the sticky camera and the diversion camera. The sticky camera is, well, it's that. It's a camera, and it sticks to things. Not much to really say about that. There's never really a time it's absolutely necessary to use, but it can be useful for getting the layout of a particular room. The diversion camera is the same concept, but now you can whistle to get enemy attention. You have to play with the placement of this one a little smarter here. The diversion camera is loaded with a knockout gas that can be triggered once the enemy is close enough. This can be a hit or miss tool. Sometimes the NPCs will walk right up to it, and other times they may wander around before losing interest and just returning to their post. So enemy AI can be pretty spotty. These aren't exactly Mensa candidates, but they can be unpleasantly perceptive when it's most inconvenient. They'll react to changes in the environment, they may investigate if a light is off, or check a damaged camera. It eventually trains you to not always pop out every light, flip every switch, knock out every guard. More times than not, your best option is to find a way around, slowly and non-lethally. But should you have to act violently, it's best to act decisively. Even then, there's a good chance that everyone will be alerted when you drop an isolated enemy. Like I said, enemies can be frustratingly clairvoyant. Wouldn't you agree? It might take some time, but you'll eventually get used to the rhythm of it all. A second or third playthrough is infinitely more enjoyable than a first. When leaving an area for another, the game does a region-wide sweep, and if any body is left in what it considers a visible spot, then you automatically receive an alert, despite whether or not a guard would actually patrol there. Alright, so fine, you'll want to stash bodies you leave behind, living or the spiritually disenfranchised. It's a simple enough thing to do, but moving them can be a laborious process, made all the more sluggish by the inability to open doors while doing so you end up having to do this weird floor shuffle with a corpse. But then again, maybe you should just consider if there's a place you can eliminate a target without having to move the body. Now, there are some brief sections that allow you the chance to do things differently, ordinarily a violent path or a non-violent one. But these times are few and far between. There are usually no two ways of completing a task, just slightly different ways of progressing through an arena. And therein lies the chief issue of Splinter Cell as a whole. It is a painfully linear game, and this linearity hampers most attempts to approach objectives from creative angles. The game simply doesn't take full advantage of the tools it gives you to make any experimentation worthwhile. What's the point of using any of this stuff if there's always an obvious path to sneak past? As it stands, I wouldn't call Splinter Cell a difficult game, just a tedious one. It's an exercise in routine, which isn't helped by the game's lack of interesting difficulty options. From the rip, you have the choice between normal and hard, but this won't actually change the game drastically. Hard mode doesn't affect enemy awareness or placement, only their health and your resources. Regardless of that, a well-timed headshot will still drop an enemy immediately. Furthermore, getting spotted and having the alarms raised does little to nothing. Several missions have complications where getting caught results in an immediate failure, but it works more like a strike system usually.
That's one alarm too many. The mission's over.
I guess I would have liked to see the game take some grander notes from its inspirations and introduce additional objectives depending on the difficulty you're playing on. Maybe station new guards where the obvious path might have been, force us through areas we otherwise would have ignored, or let us explore for an alternative path instead of just handing us a wipeout course. Splinter Cell feels so primitive by comparison to its contemporaries, even with the reliance on the real-time lighting, and that extends to the narrative as well. The story is broken up across 9 missions, but much of the ongoing narrative is delivered by these interceding news broadcasts that jump around and give some idea of the world stage. It's a disjointed way of delivering some key details, and it never really gives you a good idea of just how dire the situation really is. But now's as good a time as any to get into the minutiae of the plot, so consider this your spoiler warning. The nation of Georgia has been going through what some might call a breakup with their old government, one that involves political assassinations and unlawfully seizing power. This all comes by way of the newly appointed President Kombay Nikolads, with just a teensy bit of help from the Russians, particularly a former Spetsnaz commando named Vyacheslav Grinko. Naturally, our first mission is to investigate the disappearance of 2 CIA agents that were placed in Georgia around this time. And surprise! They're both dead. These opening missions familiarize you with the core mechanics. They play it relatively straightforward, nothing too obtuse. You're essentially moving through tight hallways and corridors as you get used to problem-solving basic obstacles the game is going to hand you. This introductory stretch covers the first 2 missions as we're introduced to our main villains, Nikolads, Grinko, and tech whiz Philip Massey. It comes to light that Nikolads and Grinko have been conducting killings in neighboring Azerbaijan. Fortunately, NATO intervenes, putting a stop to the bloodshed in record time, and Nikolads flees underground. However, Third Echelon catches wind that top-secret US military secrets are being sent to Nikolads via an offshore oil rig. Now, this mission is an outlier amongst the others. It's a loud, fast, and bright excursion. Definitely the shortest mission in the game, and it's basically a glorified tailing mission. Sam and the team discover that Nikolads is looking for something called the Ark. Whatever that is, it's probably a nuke. Nikolads, in retaliation to this, launches a cyber attack on the US and declares war, not just against the United States, but like all of NATO.
Nikolads caught us with our pants down.
We're stateside now for a spot of mole hunting, and what better place to start looking for rats that hate America than the CIA? And this is a great mission. You're slinking around the dark, very dark corners of the CIA headquarters, all while under the strict rule that you can't kill anyone. So your options are limited, and you have to rely more on timing and guile to maneuver the halls. This is also our first time getting our hands on the SC-20K, so now our non-lethal opportunities expand considerably. The mission continues on for a bit while you're put through a knowledge check of everything you've learned up until this point, which is basically everything the game has to offer you. It eventually culminates in a considerably constrained tailing section where we capture the rogue CIA agent and extract him out the back door. The mole gives up that the data he's been transmitting has been through a local tech company called Kalina Tech. Kalina Tech have been the nucleus of Grinko's information network, so we're tasked with infiltrating the office and acquiring an encryption key to trace the data even further back. Typical spy shenanigans. For as long as this mission is, it has a pretty quick tempo to it. The Georgians are in the process of liquidating the assets, so time is of the essence. Wall mines are everywhere, forcing you to either move slowly and avoid them, or more easily disable them. Just be sure to do it when the light is green. Just be sure to do it when the light is green! Again, we're open to approach things in either a lethal or non-lethal way. Mighty convenient too, since we can actually commandeer the wall mines and use them ourselves in a few spots. We find the contact, get the encryption key, and make our way towards the exit, and the last stretch really bucks the stealth genre in favor of a more violent climax. You'll meet a handful of mercenary squads along the way, and you can flex a more action-oriented playstyle here. As you encroach on your extract, Wilkes is killed in the ensuing firefight, which is sad, I think. I think I'm supposed to feel sad about this. Did I even mention this guy earlier? Our next destination is a Russian nuclear power plant. Or it would be if we were playing the PS2 version. However, the PC, Xbox, and GameCube versions never received this level in any capacity. So we have this weird plot hole where it's never really explained how or why we got to the next stage. To give you the cliff notes, Sam infiltrates a Russian nuclear power plant to further track Nikolads' cyber attacks. We discover that nuclear waste is being transported to China covertly and that Grinko and his soldiers are acting independent from the Kremlin. Basically, this is meant to exonerate Russia from any wrongdoing. Again, we pick up our data trail to the Chinese embassy in Burma. This mission isn't anything out of the ordinary, but we are introduced to some complications with the guards. One, some of them now don helmets with lights attached to them to generally just fuck up your good time. And two, they now use guard dogs, which you can kill if you really want to fuck up your good time. You don't have to do that. You can, like, tase them. It's fine. I hope. I'm going to assume it's fine. After some skillful stealthing, Sam learns that Nikolod's is linked to General Kong Feirong, which is bad.
Good Lord, Fisher. That's General Kong Feirong.
Good Lord. Who's that?
We also discover they intend on executing some American soldiers on live television, which is also bad, so we have to detour to put a stop to that. This is a relatively lengthy mission that has some of the most unique sections of the game. First on our plate is navigating a minefield while avoiding spotlights. This requires us to bounce between night vision and thermal to know where we're going and where we shouldn't be going. Following this, Sam finds himself on a rooftop above rooms full of guards that very annoyingly has its own bespoke billboard that just flashbangs you every few seconds. We have to move slowly in the times of darkness in an elaborate game of red light, green light. It's revealed to us that Nikolod's is in fact here, but not for long since Sam makes his presence known. This accelerates the execution plans, so we're on a bit of a time crunch now. We do eventually catch up to the kill squad and promptly kill them. It's here we enter the meat locker section I mentioned earlier, and while it is a cool concept, any excitement is curtailed by the inclusion of turrets and guards that can see you just fine. We descend deeper into the building into what can only be called the turret corridor. I mean, there are so many turrets in here, and dealing with them is such a fucking chore. Now, you can use them against your enemies by deactivating the friendly fire protocols and luring some poor idiot into the kill zone. It's here we're also forced into another combat section with Gringo. It's frustrating but doable, and now Gringo is dead, so that's one domino down. While down in the pins, we do meet Ambassador Long Dan, who informs us that General Feirong is dealing weapons to Nikolod's, operating independently from China. He's running a, Splinter Cell. Boo! So we hightail it back to the embassy to dig up dirt. The level is relatively unchanged from our previous excursion. Some new rooms and areas are explored, but the overall layout isn't that much different. Just expanded. And we naturally confirm that, yeah, he's moving a shit ton of bombs for Nikolod's, which we put a stop to. And this upsets Feirong, who's going all deer hunter on us, which doesn't really matter because his liver basically explodes as soon as we find him. But not before we're able to actually get the intel we need to mend US and Chinese relations. And we remained friends forever and ever and ever. And now we have made it to the climax of the game. The Georgian presidential palace with one objective: kill Nikolod's. And maybe also get that arc thing, which is probably definitely a nuke. And you're insane if you didn't figure that out yet. This is, by and large, the worst level in the game, with some fleeting moments of neat things, but overall, it's nothing special or interesting. Move slow, move quick, stay still, dodge lasers, avoid cameras. You should be a pro at this by now. But boy, I sure wasn't. At the absolute worst, this level has not one, but two shootouts. They aren't particularly hard, but to reiterate, this game is not really built to be a shooter, and if you're playing on hard, you don't have a lot of time to react. We corner and finally meet Nikolod's face-to-face in the basement, who reveals he doesn't actually have the nuke, just the password to detonate it, and he makes his escape when an entourage of special forces show up, which we dispatch in what is arguably a very cool shootout. But Nikolod's is still alive and now fully intends on detonating the nuke. Sam makes his way through the palace grounds and gets a clear shot and full Fifth Freedom authorization to kill Nikolod's.
Sharp work, Fisher.
We make our escape, and with that comes a close to the story of Splinter Cell. For now.
Hello, Lambert.
Or, if you play the bonus missions, there's more. They aren't extremely of any narrative importance, more or less tying up loose plot threads like Philip Massey and Gringo's Russian military connections. As it stands, they're great missions though, and they're absolutely worth playing if you get the time. Splinter Cell's narrative is Metal Gear Solid for people who don't like to think too hard. There is no grand statement on things other than nukes are bad. If I'm being generous, you can see it attempting to dig into the role of espionage in the information age. But again, it doesn't have anything to chew on outside of a surface level reading on that. The stakes are never fully realized. One moment it's a doomsday scenario, and then you touch a computer and all of a sudden everything is fine. It treats it as if the role of information in the military is a he said, she said game. It's conservative airport doorstopper fiction. Just how Tom Clancy likes it. But all that isn't to say it's bad. It's a fine plot to get behind, if not a familiar one from Ubisoft. Or at least it would become one in the years that followed. Overall, Splinter Cell is a garden variety example of rose-tinted glasses. I remember really enjoying this game a lot when I was younger and thinking very fondly of it, but the more I played it across my 3.5 playthroughs, I found myself thinking less and less charitably of it. It was the first entry in a brand new series from a team that was primarily in the tactical shooter and strategy genres, so obviously there were going to be some growing pains. But it does have its moments where I do really enjoy it. When it plays well, it plays really, really well. Sam Fisher is an iconic character with an iconic voice, wearing iconic goggles, doing iconic things. It's a good game with a layer of age that makes this a frustrating one at times. It's rudimentary in its execution a lot of the times, falling flat in comparison to its contemporaries and even to its predecessors. But Splinter Cell's legacy is an enduring one, and its influence is undeniable. So it's a tough recommend for me. Unless you really want that historical context, you can easily pass this one for better stealth games. Or maybe wait around for that supposed remake that's coming. As for now, that's all I gotta say about it. Thanks for watching and supporting me. I know this one took a bit, but it was an insightful venture into project expectations and management. So come back next time for something else.